Today, I thought we would try something a little different. And I want to teach you about hunting. And some of you are thinking, what does he know about hunting? Hey, listen, I grew up in a family with a lot of hunters. Our family hunted a lot, and I still hunt. When I go to the store, I know what I'm going to get. I go right to the spot. None of this browsing the aisles, looking for bargains kind of thing. I go to the store to hunt. I get it, I go to the checkout, and I get out. But that's not what I'm going to talk about today. Now, what I want to talk about is the art of camouflage. I want to talk about the art of camouflage. You know, camouflage is all about just hiding in plain sight. And so here, I'll just kind of show you, I'll tip my hand right at the front and show you, here's a great camouflage outfit. Now, isn't that a great outfit? Let me tell you how good it is. It's out of stock. I wanted to buy one for Ed, but they're out of stock. So, camouflage is an interesting thing. Let me just tell you that our U.S. government spent $28 million purchasing or creating camouflage uniforms for the Afghan army. $28 million for the Afghan army to wear camouflage that they never wore because they were unusable in their terrain. Now, when the Pentagon was questioned about it, their response was that the Minister of Defense for the Afghan army said that he preferred the patterns that went in the woodlands. And so he wants them to wear these woodland patterns that did no good at all in that environment. Sometimes people don't get the idea of camouflage, but some of you do. For example, in 2021, this last year, did you know that $382 billion, now stop, $382 billion were spent on cosmetics. In other words, there's a whole lot of people who don't want you to see them the way they really are, right? If that's not camouflage, I don't know what is. And I just lost about half of the audience right there. All that said, camouflage is the ability to hide in plain sight. And there are some in this room right now that are really good at it. There are some here today that are with us and you don't recognize them for what they are. And there are others right now, dozens and dozens of others with us online that are very good at hiding. They are much more discreet. They're harder to find. But if you know what you're looking for, you can still spot them. You can still find them. But I want to tell you, they make it difficult. Like deer, they learned how to be still. And like turkeys, they've learned how to just blend in to their environment. And like a quail, you can walk right by and never know that they're there. And just like so many other wildlife, they're wary. They're wary of you. They fear that you will hurt them. And so they hide in plain sight. Now you're wondering right now, who's he talking about? What's this? Are there terrorists in here? No. It's not anything like that. There's nobody here that's going to hurt you. It's that they are hurt. And they're hiding in plain sight. You know, it's ironic when you think about it that we live in the most connected time that's ever been. We have smartphones and we have the web. We have social media. And yet there is an epidemic of loneliness sweeping through our country right now. We have with us right now men and women and children that spend day after day miserable. Not because they're alone, but because they're lonely. They lack the relational connection that they desperately need. And what I want us to do today is to learn how to recognize them, how to spot them, and then how to effectively help them through that. If you want a definition, I'll give you one. Loneliness is a negative feeling of being disconnected or isolated from other people. But it has nothing to do with whether or not there are other people around. It has to do with whether or not you connect to the people that are around. In other words, you can be in a mob, you can be in our foyer when this thing lets out and there'll be wall-to-wall people, or you can be in a bar, or you can be in a concert and still feel left out. On the other hand, you can be totally by yourself and yet secure and comfortable knowing that you're connected to people who love you. The number of people that are struggling from this is staggering. Just a brand new study from Harvard says that 36% of all Americans, 36% of all Americans struggle with loneliness frequently. And frequently is 3 days a week or more. 61% of the young adults struggle with loneliness. And 51% of mothers of young children are never alone, but lonely. And as you can only imagine, COVID's made it a whole lot worse. 43% of the young adults said that it's a lot worse for them since COVID hit. But what I want you to understand is not just how prevalent it is. What you really need to catch is how dangerous it is if it's not addressed. It can affect so much of your life. Did you know that loneliness literally can cut your lifespan shorter? In fact, loneliness has the same effect on your lifespan as smoking 15 cigarettes a day or being an alcoholic. It's worse than being obese in terms of your lifetime. But it's not just a physical thing. Lonely people are more critical of themselves. And lonely people learn to expect rejection. Now think about what that does. They expect rejection, so then they want to isolate so they won't be rejected, which only feeds the loneliness. And then, being persistently lonely through midlife, and that's ages 45 to 64, being persistently lonely during midlife increases the likelihood of dementia or Alzheimer's. I had no idea. No idea. And now some of you listening are very uncomfortable. And you've gotten more uncomfortable the further I've gone, because today I'm not talking just to you, I'm talking about you. And you're not very comfortable with that, but what I want you to understand is the reason I'm bringing this up is because I want to help. The reason I'm bringing this up is not to call you out, it's to help you out. So why are there so many people suffering with loneliness today? Well, we've already mentioned that COVID has made it a lot worse, and that's not hard to figure out. COVID brings quarantine, which you've got to isolate. It brings working from home, so you're not around your peers. It brings masks. It brings social distancing, and all that is logical and makes sense how that adds. But another piece that fits into this, there's a sociologist by the name of Mark Dunkelman. And Dunkelman says that if you divide your relationships into 3 rings, you've got that inner ring around you, which are family and your closest friends. And I would just tell you that 1 to 2 close friends in a lifetime is a blessing, okay? And then you have the middle ring of neighbors. And then you have the outer ring of those that are our digital connections and our social media connections. And what Dunkelman theorizes is that the middle ring is collapsing. The middle ring is disappearing. We don't neighbor anymore. 50 years ago, neighbors chatted across the fence. And neighbors would talk across the yard. You'd come to my porch and we'd drink a glass of tea. Or I'd come over to your house and drink a cup of coffee. When we went on vacation, you watched things for us to make sure everything was there. And that's the way you would have described a good neighbor. But the description of a good neighbor has changed. It's morphed today. And a good neighbor is described by his or her etiquette. Leave me alone and be quiet. If you leave me alone and you're quiet, you're a good neighbor, right? What comes out of that is a relational void in our lives. Now, it's one thing to be unfulfilled in a family relationship, but it's a whole nother item to be left out, unwanted. When you're left out, you're unwanted, it leaves you with feelings of deficiency and rejection. You feel like you're just unseen, irrelevant. One 62-year-old woman recently moved to another community, and she said, loneliness is easier to cope with in a place where you don't know anyone than it is where you do and you're left out. We need to fix that. You and I need to step into that void. So that's what I want to talk about today. I'm going to take one verse of Scripture and I'm going to cut it down to one part of one verse. I'm going to be in Romans 12:10a. Romans 12:10a. Here's what it says. It says, be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. So what exactly does it mean to be devoted? What does it look like? Well, I might give you the Old Testament example, the example out of the Old Testament of a lady named Ruth. There's a whole book written about her, but it's only 4 chapters. It's real short. Let me give you the short version of her story, okay? There was this Hebrew family, this family of Jews that moved from Bethlehem in Judea to Moab, which is a different country. And they moved over here to Moab, and this man and his wife and 2 sons. And shortly after they moved, the man died. And the 2 sons married Moabite women. So they stayed there, but over the course of the next 10 years, both of their husbands died. So now you have a widow, Naomi, and 2 daughters-in-laws that are all 3 widows. And Naomi decides, I'm just going to go back home. I'm going to go back to Bethlehem, back to my hometown, and have my family there take care of me. And she advised the girls to do the same. And one of them did, but the other one, Ruth, didn't. And here's what Ruth said to Naomi. You may have heard some of this language before. Ruth said, don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. And when you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me. What Ruth was saying is, even though we've been through difficulty, I'm going to be here for you. Even though life's got hard for you and things have gotten tough, you can count on me. I'll be there. I won't let you down. Or there's another story out of the Old Testament, a guy by the name of David. Maybe you've heard of him. Now, David is on the run. King Saul's trying to kill him, so David is hiding out in the caves down in southern Judea. And he's got a few guys that are with him, committed to be with him, and they're hanging out there with him. Well, it happens that this one day, and it doesn't give us a context, so I make it up in my own mind like this, that it's really hot and dusty, and David's really thirsty, and he pulls out his old trusty canteen and takes a swig of pretty hot, warm, putrid water. And just without thinking, just muttering, it wasn't meant to be anything, he says, boy, what I wouldn't give for a drink from the well back home. He says, what I wouldn't give for just a drink from that well at Bethlehem. Now, what you need to know is that the Philistines They were David's arch enemy. You remember? David, as a little boy, had killed their hero, had killed Goliath. He was a Philistine. Well, the Philistines had a garrison set up in Bethlehem. So it was full of Philistine soldiers. But at night, 3 of David's men slipped out of camp, made the trek to Bethlehem, snuck behind enemy lines, and drew water from that well to bring back to David. You want to know what it means to be devoted? It means I'm willing to take risks for you. The term translated "be devoted" was a fascinating term. I studied it this week, and I never noticed it before, never seen it before. It's a compound word in the Greek. It's one compound word, and the first part of it is the word philo, like phileo. It is the word for love. It's word for loving a friend, loving like a friend loves. And then it's connected to another word, storge, and you put them together and you have philostorge. Storge is family love. Better than that, this will make sense to you, it's motherly love. So now you've got this love compounded with love. It is to say, even though you're not a part of our family, I'm going to treat you like you are. When you're sick, I'll nurture you. When you're bullied, I'll defend you. When others don't see the good in you, I'll find it. And I'll even love you when you don't deserve it. I'll love you even when you've hurt me. And I will just keep giving and giving and giving myself to you. Courtney is one of our special buddies. If you don't know what I mean by special buddies, we have a group of adult special needs that attend here, and Courtney's one of those. And she's special because she's created a special connection with my wife, Mary Ann. And their relationship's really special. They talk every day, at least a dozen times. Connie checked me on that. I think the 41 times was the record. Is that right? Okay. But they have a really special relationship. Now, somehow through Courtney, Mary Ann has gotten to know Nitin. And Nitin is a special need adult in North Carolina. And Nitin calls Mary Ann every day. And you can count on it every night before Nitin can go to bed, he has to call her and wish her good night. Every night. And so, you got these 2 special adults that have a special name for Mary Ann. They don't call her Mary Ann, they call her Grandma. She's Grandma because she treats them like they're her grandkids. It's pretty special to watch. Let me try to describe what it is to be devoted. It means that I value. You're special to me. I'm committed to you. I will be there for the long haul. You prioritize around. I'm going to shuffle the other things in my life to make sure your needs are met. There's a word that you probably don't know, but you ought to. There's a word that I want to introduce right now. It's called SUCCOR. SUCCOR. And it's an old English word that's kind of drifted out of use, but here's what it means. It means I will come to your aid with professional help. You tell me what you need, and I will provide, I'll meet that need. Whatever that need is, I'll be there. And then there's another word I want to introduce you to that has just drifted out of use over the course of time, but I want to bring it back into your language and bring it back into your life. It's the word loyal. I want you to think for the last time that you heard somebody refer to somebody as loyal. It means you can count on me. I'll be there for you. I won't walk away. You know, loyalty has been replaced by free agency. My services go to the highest bidder, right? But that's professional sports, and I get that, I guess. Boy, at least we can count on colleges being loyal, right? College athletes, they're going to be loyal. Enter the transfer portal, exit loyalty. Back when I was a boy, back in the day, I can remember when a man would go to work for a company and he worked for the same company his whole life. Never changed. Stayed with them all the way through because the company was loyal to him. Company treated him right. And he responded with loyalty. Let me tell you something else back in those days. All right? Back in those days, there were Chevy families. Do you know what I mean by a Chevy family? And in contrast with a Ford family, right? Yeah, and you were a Chevy family or you were a Ford family. I had one guy walk out today and says, "Want me to show you my Chevy tattoo?" So, okay. I mean, this was important stuff back in the day. You were loyal to your brand. I don't much care if you're loyal to a brand anymore or not. I don't care if you're loyal to a company or to a car. But I sure think we ought to be loyal to people. I think we ought to be there for people. And yet somewhere in my lifetime, me has replaced we. And autonomy and individual rights have replaced team and the good of the whole. And loyal disappeared from the list of the most admirable qualities that a person can have. And as a result, some of you have fallen through the cracks and found yourself without anyone who cares. So let's fix that, shall we? Let me tell you a truth. Life is better together. Life is better. I didn't say life was easier. Didn't say it was easier. I didn't say it was less complicated. I said it was better. It's a lot better. It's when you take these lives and you put them together and they melt together because they spend time together and they grow fond of one another. And they accomplish what they could have never accomplished on their own. And yet they enjoy the bond that comes from doing life together. So all of that said, let's get down to business, shall we? Let me teach you how to hunt. All right? It starts by knowing where to look. Now, ready? Here we are. Everybody, I want you to look to your right. Okay? Now look to your left. Now look behind you. All right, eyes back up here. Okay? What'd you see? Oh no. Oh no. Well, did you see them? Of course not. They're camouflaged. They're camouflaged. They're hiding in plain sight. They're right there. They're blending in. They've learned to look like everybody else. So now, let me just give you some simple clues that'll help you with this. Ready? Here's the first one. Ready? Sometimes they sit alone. And sometimes they don't. Most often, they drift to the outsides rather than to the center. And the same thing is true in the foyer, by the way. Okay? If they're in the foyer, they're moving in a hurry. But if they're not, they're a little more on the fringe. They have a hard time with eye contact. there's one more big piece. Ready? This is the big piece. They smile. They smile. Why? Because that's camouflage. That says, don't look at me. Everything's okay over here. Look somewhere else, please. It starts by knowing where to look. No, it doesn't start. It starts with wanting to look. It starts with caring. It starts with, listen, we become so comfortable with the relationships we have, we don't even think about it. We are just, it's so unconscious of us that we talk to the same people we talked to before. And we immediately, when we walk into a place, we look for the person that we're comfortable with, not the person that needs us. We walk in and you think about your own experience here today. Who have you talked to? Those of us that stood at the door and made you? Or those you already knew that you're comfortable with? So it starts by wanting to do it. It starts by noticing. And then it starts by engaging. It means getting closer. The way to know if somebody's lonely is by making contact. If you don't approach them, you'll never know. Listen, let me just give you a clue. Lonely people are not very comfortable coming up to you and saying, I'm lonely, would you help me? I'm looking for a relationship. Would you step into that void in my life? It's likely not going to happen. So what happens? We have to initiate the conversation. 50% of those struggling with loneliness reported they just wish that someone would ask them how they're doing in a genuine way. I'm missing my buddy Lawrence today. Lawrence has had COVID and he's not here. But Lawrence will ask, how you doing? Really? And when he adds the really, he leans. Because he genuinely wants to know. How you doing? Really? The most important thing is to care. So initiate a conversation. And be present in the conversation. Be there now. Don't be looking over their shoulder. Don't be making a shopping list in your brain. Be there. Listen. Offer cheer, offer encouragement, compliment. Offer to do something together. Offer to go shopping. Offer to take them out to eat. Offer to meet them for coffee. Offer to include them in an activity that you already have got going where they can be involved with other people. But don't just bring them and abandon them. Bring them and get them included and involved and get them building other relationships to help with that. Truth is, it'll help you as much as it will them. Now, before I close, I just need to say a word or two to those of you that are lonely. There are those of you that you feel like I've been talking about you. Now I want you to understand I'm really, really, really talking to you. And I want to first say this to you. I know that it's real. I know it's real, and I know it hurts. And I know that if you don't take steps to address it, it can get dangerous. I know it's really hard to admit to somebody else that you're lonely. I know it feels like you failed, but you didn't. You didn't fail, we failed you. Now let me give you a couple of pieces real quick. The first one is this. Be very, 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 very careful with social media. Social media will do you more damage than good if you're really lonely. First of all, if you're building your life around getting likes and you don't get likes, how does that do for lonely? But secondly, this is the big one. That's where bullies hang out. That's where mean-spirited, harsh people hang out and hide behind the screen. And they will harass you and they will hurt you. Understand. And then understand how painful it is when other people post pictures with their friends and it hurts. So just real simple, don't do it. Don't go there. Instead of hanging out there, why don't you hang out here? Why don't you serve? Find a place to serve. Find a place to volunteer. It's counterintuitive. But when you start pouring yourself into someone else, you're the one that gets the help out of that. When you start pouring yourself into somebody else, suddenly, it's not about me anymore. And it changes. You get help, you get filled, you find worth. The antidote for loneliness is reaching out to help others. So be devoted to one another. Be devoted to one another. God created us to do life together. Now listen, this isn't good advice. This is God's design. And I want you to understand this. I want you just to think for a moment and imagine the difference you're going to make in somebody's life just because you care.